Good afternoon. Well, it's 72 degrees. You can ask Thomas Jefferson. There's no wind to speak of. It's overcast. It rained off and on today. And there was some sun. And I took off my shirt for a brief time on the thought that at least I'd be warm, even if I wouldn't get any color added to my my white pallor. So, what's new? Well, there are two areas that are pretty important today, I think. One is the courtroom with Trump, and the other is the Middle East. And both have been wall-to-wall coverage, I guess, all day. The struggle in the courtroom that interests me, as it always does, is the struggle between the judge and, in this case, the defendant, Trump. It's often that we see a judge and a zealous counsel dealing with each other. And vigor and zeal are not contemptible. But what Trump does out of the courtroom is to lie and mislead the public. The way I think of it is, in the Trump courtroom, that Trump is testing his opponent, and he's finding the judge is more game than he anticipated. See, in Trump's experience, I think he finds that he easily provokes people to take a position that they learn to regret. And this judge shows measure that few judges or persons might show. I think that he has practiced attachment to the rule of law and detachment from the person before him. And it is a study in treating the person as any other person. And he even made some remarks today that undermine that, because in the section on sanctions, the judge said he did not want to impose this on anyone. But he would if what was going on continued. So in a prize fight, one sizes up the opponent by the length of the arms, the quickness, the height, the weight, the conditioning. That's in the sweet science, as boxing has been called. But in court, there's an advantage to the judge in that he has authority and he has muscle to exercise that authority if he needs to do so. He has power. He can rain down on parties or counsel or witnesses who contradict what is necessary to good order, to justice, to due process, which just means fundamental fairness, really. So the discussion is, since we don't expect Trump can control himself, however smart that might be for any other defendant, and as he thinks himself to be a martyr, he believes that if he goes to jail, it will profit him in some way. But those of us who've seen trials, how they're played in and out of the courtroom, know that you may be winning a case on the street, but you're not winning it in the room where they can put you in custody. Now, some are saying when the judge does hold him in contempt and issues a finding that he should go to jail, some think he should put that aside until the end of the case. No, not at all. The whole point is that the judge should be stopping dead in his tracks the kind of misleading lies and attacks on the process that are unjustified and that are just part of the defense that Trump is a victim when in fact he's the offending agent. And on a scale unprecedented in American history for a former president to have tried to overrun the government so that he could illegally supplant himself in the White House again, though he lost an election by 1 million votes or whatever it was. So what should the judge do? Well, he should continue what he's doing, and when it's proven again that $1,000, a contempt citation, is not enough to control this baboon, apologies to baboons, that we put him in custody immediately. During the trial, well, Wednesday or the weekend. Put him in trial there, or make him surrender on a day-to-day basis for a couple of days while the trial is on. The notion that any other person would be treated with kids' gloves shows the fallacy of treating Trump with kids' gloves, because no other person would be treated generously, whether he was a president or not, whether he was a bricklayer, an MTA worker, you name it. And even people with prestige and accomplishment who go wrong for some reason, large or small, they wouldn't get this consideration. Now, the trial itself is headed toward the barn, and it's like those horses you're on, and you bring them toward a barn, and they're tired of being out, and if you're not careful, they'll gallop away with you to get to the barn. Well, the prosecution may not feel like it's at a gallop, but it's at a forward trot, I would say, and it's headed toward the barn. The defense hasn't scored points on cross-examination, perhaps because of what Trump wants, perhaps because of ability, perhaps, who knows. But the defense is present, but not something to account for. And I think the reason is there really is no defense. And that's why we have this situation. The trial, it may not end this week, but I think it'll end next week, which is briefer than people were predicting when they said it would be a 6-week trial. And they also said it would take 2 weeks to choose a jury, and it took a matter of days. The example that I would give you for what is wrong with speech out of court, attacking jurors, witnesses, individuals, family members, the system, is best exemplified by one Trumpeter who was saying, "Are you telling me that if we had a juror who was so terrible that Trump couldn't speak about him?" Now, what's misleading about that? First of all, you can't talk about the jurors that way. So is there a remedy? How does it go? Ibi iuria, ibi remedia. Where there's a wrong, there's a remedy. And what's the remedy here? The remedy is that all the jurors had to answer questionnaires, that each side, prosecution and defense, got peremptory challenges, meaning if they didn't like your hair, they could throw you off, but there are certain other constitutional principles that could be violated. And the judge and the lawyers screened all the members of the jury for the kind of wrong action that this Trumpeter is talking about. In other words, every time these people open their mouth outside the courtroom, they lie. They seek to mislead the public that this is not a fairly run trial. And it is. And it even shows some conservatism in the way it conducts the trial. So, what are we to do? We're to try this case through. If he breaks the gag orders, this time he goes to jail. He goes to jail now. And the judge does it over the weekend, or in a day when the court is not in session, or maybe while the court is in session. So that's some thinking on that subject. And the people out there who, despite all the things Trump has done, talk about suggesting to the judge that he show mercy where none is deserved, that he play the patsy, the appeaser. To who? The megalomaniac and his crazy followers? No, that's stupid. And it's unjustified as a matter of fact and law and the violations that Trump seeks to pursue. So let's go to another crazy place. Are we going to have a ceasefire in the Middle East? Now, Hamas agreed with Egypt and Qatar that there was a program they could agree to, which is that they would return 33 of 130 hostages, and there would be a 40-day truce, and presumably we'd continue to talk about how we end the war. Now, Israel didn't sign off on this, and I don't know if they have yet while I'm talking to you, but Israel had proposed 40 of hostages and 6 of the Palestinians who are in custody. Now, you have to keep in mind that there are, well, many Palestinians. I believe there's 9,000 in custody in Israel. So, Biden has met with Abdullah of Jordan, and Netanyahu has been resistant because he wants to go into Rafah and level the place like he's done every place else. And so he drags his feet with negotiations over a ceasefire in order to commit more violence. There were protests by Israelis at a square, as I understand it, in Israel called Hostages Square. And there's pressure on Netanyahu and the cabinet and the government to make an agreement and to defer to their desires to have the hostages freed. And the flip side of that would be the Palestinians. They want an agreement. Biden complained, as did 88 Democrats from the House, that Israel was interfering with assistance to the people. And Netanyahu says he's now going to help that assistance. How can we predict the direction of this disaster? I think it is possible that the pressure is built at home in Israel, particularly among those who are related to the hostages, some of whom may be dead. And here at home, where there's been protest, that what we're doing is aiding in war crimes. And while some would like to take one side or the other, both sides have committed war crimes, no question about it. So how do we bring this beast home and tame it and resume civilization? And that's quite a question, because it will affect our election here. So it will affect what Biden does. And it will affect what's going on in Israel and certainly in Palestine. And we don't know what Iran or Lebanon or other parties may do. So, we have two magnificent problems that are directing the world's attention. The trial for most of the world, other than America, may be about symbolism. But for us, it's going to mean real, hard, tortured government. If Trump is convicted and still wins the presidency, that's unacceptable. It's also unacceptable if Rafah is destroyed while pretending to bargain to settle the war in the Middle East. It's interesting that it got dark right when I was saying that, but I think that is the effect. So I say goodbye to you and from my cathedral of trees, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Bye-bye.